Hello. Welcome to our journey of discovery, thinking big, finding mammoth in elephant country. My name is Glenn Poole, MD and CEO of Mammoth Minerals. Alongside me for the journey was Johnny Vargas. He's my in-country project manager from Peru, geologist, and just an amazing human being. I'll first ask you to look past the words in this picture on the first slide to what ended up being the first photo I took of one of the key areas in our project area, and the inspiration to apply for Xplor, and what ultimately became the foundations of what Mammoth Minerals is today. We had lots of questions, not many answers, but the first thing we needed to do was ask the big questions. What are they? I'll start with a question of you. How much copper is needed to make one of these? Seen across the world as a clean and green source of energy. But I'll come back to that later. The how do we find these top-tier deposits, critical for the future? What is needed to not only create, but preserve them? Where do you even start? And where do you look? So for us, it wasn't in Australia. We don't think there's many left here. Some might disagree. So we were looking for places with, continental margins, where the crust is thick enough to incubate these deposits, preserve them, put them in reach of modern mining. We, as Mammoth, now operate across the Americas in places we think give us the best chance. But for the purposes of this deposit, we're talking about southern Peru, in the highlands, in an area untouched by modern exploration. So, we had the land position. What are we looking for? What does good look like? Even if we found it, would we know? We knew we had copper. That was at surface. That wasn't argued. But we needed deep architecture. Mineralization in the right age range, in the right rocks, under the right conditions. We needed the perfect mineral storm, thanks to John Miller's training, and to be frozen in geological time. So, where to start? For us, our explorers even asking the right question. A lot of us are quick to want answers from the face of a drill bit. It's expensive and very definitive. The first thing we need to do is frame out, like Marley said, knock down the tenement boundaries, the lines on a map, really zoom out from a crustal scale and zoom in from there. Geology doesn't stop at the edge of the mineral license, the tenement boundary, or a country line, and neither should you. And what can we learn for free? What's happening over the fence, down the road? There's so much data that is actually unused. And look, what does it mean for where we are? We have to start thinking much bigger and focus in from there. There's a lot of work to be done that is interesting, and I'm sure most of you in this room have done it, that does not drive economics, but is an amazing technical success, and many billions of dollars have been spent on those. But advancements in science, not necessarily in business. So what did we do? Come on. So we edit that in post-production. We needed to understand what the rocks beneath our feet were doing. We could look up and pray for answers, and a lot of us do, but what we needed to do was look down, deep down, with magnetics initially. Unvalidated, still waiting to hear back from the Guinness World Records, but potentially one of the biggest high-altitude UAV magnetic surveys completed, with over 260 square kilometers. High-resolution data that actually was amazing, better than we thought. Johnny was excited, so I was excited. This was followed by magnetotellurics. How far down did this architecture go? It needed to be deep, mantle tapping structures, bringing these fluids up. So on Thursday, released that data to the market, and better than we expected, absolutely exceptional, deep, intrusive style architecture that we're seeing. But to quote the great Emmett Brown, Dr. Emmett Brown, roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. Well, we did. We didn't have them, though. So we engaged the original four-wheel drive, the donkey. Don't know if it meets emission standards, but that's seen there carrying geophysics gear up into the high areas of our work area. Quite literally the road less travelled, or sometimes it wasn't even built, but sometimes there's elegance in that simplicity, and that's the best approach. And as I'm sure Johnny will attest, it wasn't always easy, with some of the challenges feeling like impassable mountains, for lack of a pun, but perseverance prevailed in the face of adversity, which leads us to where we are now. We didn't start this journey as Mammoth Minerals, developing a strategy A brand, a culture that matched our ambitions was needed. Realizing that an activity is not a strategy. What you're doing this field season is not a goal or a mission. It's merely a step towards what you're trying to achieve. We need to look long, deep, and far to define our strategy, and I implore you to do the same. There's been a lot of discussion over the past few days, internally and I'm sure externally, about what the exploration sector is missing. We as juniors, we're hungry, we're motivated, we're excited to get out into the field, but we need to leverage off that technology that's being developed in the institutions, the big thinking that's been developed by the companies like BHP. What is a successful exploration strategy into the future? Things are getting harder to find. This photo here, that's a photo of the opening slide. Same area, taken from a different angle. It puts things in a different light. It gave us clarity, changing the perspective, actually highlighted what we were working with there, and that is the core of the porphyry target we've identified. But wait, yes, Pat, I'm getting there. That can't be the end, the wind turbine. So, well, a bit like exploration, sometimes the answer's been in front of you the whole time and you've been staring at it in plain sight. So the answer's around 10 tonnes of copper, which is about the same as a full-grown mammoth. So please, join us on our journey and learn more about our big ideas. Follow the link below or catch up with us outside. It's a big, huge thank you to the Cohort especially. They've been amazing this year, the Xplor team and the support we've got, and you all for your time. Thank you.